Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the LSU Sports Insider podcast for Monday, January the 20th. It's Martin Luther King Day. We've got Snowmageddon coming to South Louisiana this week, but we don't care. We're back anyway, and we are here to talk a little women's basketball. I'm Zach Ewing, along with advocate LSU women's hoops beat writer Reed Darcey. Reed, what is the most snow you've seen in your life?
Okay, so I was in second grade. I believe it was the 2008 snow we got. I was in second grade. Nobody knew it was coming. I remember we were getting ready to leave for school, and then all of a sudden it starts snowing, and we were like, "What in the world is going on?" I think that was the last time I think we had a real snow. This is the first time in my lifetime for sure that we've known that the snow is coming. Every time, usually when we get it, it's kind of a surprise, but it feels really weird this time to know that it's coming. I'm not sure that's ever happened.
Yeah, it feels like I don't want to compare it to a hurricane because I don't think it's that serious, but like people are rushing to the gas pumps and all this stuff. And oh my God, we got to get out before the ice comes. And as someone who has lived, not a lot, but I have lived at times in colder climes, it's kind of funny to watch. But yeah, the first year that I moved to Baton Rouge was 2017, and we got snow that December, a couple of inches. And I thought, wow, does it actually really snow here? And I don't think I've seen a single flake since. So it'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see what happens tomorrow for sure.
yeah.
Hopefully, though,
It's even rarer in New Orleans. Where I grew up. I assume maybe Baton Rouge had it a couple times, but yeah, I've only seen it once or twice. So
yeah, I
excited.
believe our Jim Derry, who hosts the Datitude podcast, has said that he lives in Mandeville and they got snow, as did Baton Rouge, but he had to drive down to New Orleans for something that day, and by the time he got to New Orleans, there was no snow. So it was only north of the lakes that got the snow in that 2017. So it's been a long time for New Orleans, and it's been pretty long for Baton Rouge too. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, hopefully you all are able to enjoy it and stay safe and all of that stuff. And hopefully Reed's able to get to Columbia, South Carolina on Thursday, because that's what we're going to talk about is LSU's massive game, just about as big as it gets for a regular season game at South Carolina on Thursday. We're going to break that down. We're going to talk about how LSU's been playing. Their win yesterday at Florida, as you can see, bumped them up to 20-0. So a nice round number. We'll talk about what's working, what they still need to work on, and how they can finally get that Gamecock monkey off their back. First, want to let you know, Tiger fans, this show is brought to you by Waste Pro. If you're planning a tailgate or event, you can keep your guests comfortable with portable toilets from Waste Pro. Call 225-744-6400 and mention the LSU Sports Insider for a special offer. Okay, Reed, LSU beats Florida yesterday. Final score was, I don't have the final score in front of me. I thought it was on here. 80-63. 80-63 was the final score. They are now 5-0 in the SEC, 20-0 in overall. How are they playing right now? Because it's kind of weird. It seems like the final scores have been fine, but they've needed some runs. They always get the job done. Again, we talked about this the last show. You don't want to nitpick 20-0, but it feels like that's the only thing you can do right now is, okay, well, what can they do better?
I think they're playing pretty well. I mean, if you look at the games against Tennessee and Vanderbilt, those are two quality wins. Vanderbilt's a real solid team this year. They got some real scores, I think, some real size and athleticism too. And I was expecting them to give LSU kind of a fight in the PMAC last week. So it was a good win for LSU to get the win over them. Obviously, we've talked about Tennessee. I'm really impressed by them. I was impressed by them before the SEC season started, and I'm still impressed by them even after they've dropped a couple games here. I think they're a really tough team, and that was a really difficult win for LSU to go pick up on the road in a tight game, and then to come back and play Vanderbilt and win another tight game. It's like the games have been tough, but LSU is pulling them out. And I think if you're an LSU fan, you can look at that one of two ways. You can see like, hey, maybe LSU should be blowing these teams out. They should be winning by greater margins. Or you can look at it the flip side, maybe a more glass half full approach where you say, okay, they're winning these close games early on, and that's going to help them later down the line when they get into the really difficult games come March. So depending what you want to look at it, I think this team, I think they're playing pretty well. They're playing good. It's tough to find things that they're doing wrong. I think if we did, we would be nitpicking them quite a bit. They've picked up a couple quality wins. And we said before the podcast that we did, for the podcast we did before they played Tennessee, we said that game is going to show us a lot about who this team is. And because they won that game, I think it showed us that LSU is going to finish probably 1, 2, 3 in the SEC and then go from there. So that's sort of where they're at headed into South Carolina. And we'll see how that game shapes up because it's going to be a tough one for LSU. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina is the bar, and we'll see if LSU is ready to clear that bar. But I think to this point, that win at Tennessee, clearly LSU's best win of the season. And they find ways to raise their game. You could say they're playing up or down to their opponent. It's kind of a Kansas City Chiefs thing, right? Like you'd like to see the best team just be dominant all the time. But if you keep finding ways to win, at some point, it's not a fluke. It's a team that knows how to win and knows when it's time to kind of bear down and get that victory. So LSU's found a way to do that. Now we see if they can do it against South Carolina. We're going to break that game down and talk about a few star players along the way and who's playing well for LSU right after this break on the LSU Sports Insider.
Experience the convenience and cleanliness that Waste Pro brings to Mardi Gras, LSU tailgates, and festivals with our top-notch portable toilet services. Perfect for large crowds and community events. Join the countless satisfied families and organizers who trust Waste Pro to keep their gatherings spotless and sanitary. Discover more about our services and make your next event a success at wasteprousa.com.
All right, welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider, going through LSU women's basketball. They're 20-0, and still just a brief talk about how they've gotten here before we kind of turn the focus to South Carolina. And this is our star player segment. It is brought to you by Waste Pro. Ensure your tailgate or event is a hit with clean and convenient portable toilets from Waste Pro. Rent yours today. And I don't know, Reed, star player. They got a lot of star players, and it seems like it's a different player every night who steps up. We talked so much in the offseason about Flo J. Johnson, rightfully so. She's one of them. But in 5 SEC games, LSU's had 4 different leading scorers. They've had Anissa Morrow, they've had Michaela Williams, they've had Flo J, and they've had Kaylin Gilbert each lead the team in scoring at least once. Morrow's done it twice, and she actually has the highest scoring average in SEC play at 19.6 points per game. But really, you just any given night, somebody else could step up and beat you from this team.
Yeah, it could be Anissa, it could be Michaela, it could be Flage, and it could be Kaylin Gilbert. You know, we've talked about Kaylin Gilbert, how good she's been, and the added element that she brings to this team, scoring off the bench, something they didn't have last year. And we talk about those close games, right? How LSU's been able to pull them out. She's a large reason why, because she hit 2 game-winning shots. The first was against Washington the week of Thanksgiving, and then she hit the one against Tennessee. Having that extra shot creator, that extra scorer, is going to really help LSU in games like this against South Carolina. But just a quick second on Anissa Morrow. We should talk about her as much as we can, because I don't want her to keep flying under the radar. Just because of how good she's been and how consistent she's been. She's really been a luxury for LSU because you can depend on her to get a double-double every night. She's got double-doubles in 18 of LSU's 20 games this year. She has 92 career double-doubles, and she's only played 123 career games. So you're expecting her to get you 15 points, 10 rebounds at a minimum every single game pretty much. And that's a huge luxury to have, particularly for an LSU team that lost Angel Reese, lost one of its top rebounders at program history. And to have Anissa Morrow step up right behind her and just take care of that, you know, rebounding is such a huge part of what Kim Mulkey coach teams want to do. It's an important part of how they play defense, and it really sets up their offense as well. And for Anissa to just be not only the top rebounder in the country, but just one of the best rebounders, you know, ever in the history of the women's game. it's just huge for LSU, and it's probably the largest reason why they're in this position right now, because she's been that good and that consistent and that reliable, and you know exactly what you're going to get from her every single night, including on Thursday against South Carolina.
Yeah, it's just an amazing stat. She has a double-double in all 5 SEC games. She has double-digit rebounds in 19 of LSU's 20 games. the only exception was Northwestern State, where LSU won by 60, and she wasn't out there for that much. She only played 20 minutes, so she basically gets double-digit rebounds every night. Her last 4 games have been 20-10 games. Against Auburn, she was 21 points and 14 rebounds. Against Tennessee, it was 23 points and 21 rebounds. Vandy, 23 points, 15 rebounds, and then Florida, 20 and 10. So she is averaging, as I mentioned, 19.6 points per game and 14 rebounds per game in SEC play. So, and again, we're talking about a team where before the year, everybody's talking about Flo J. Johnson. To a certain extent, everybody's talking about Michaela Williams. And it's not like those two have been bad. I mean, I think they've met expectations. It's just that this LSU team has a lot of different ways that it can beat you.
Yeah, and one of the new ways they could beat you, I think, is by going small. We've seen LSU use the small ball lineup throughout times, once they started SEC play, and it's worked for them, especially against Tennessee, a team that likes to space you out, shoot a lot of threes, run the floor a lot. I was looking at that game and I'm thinking, maybe it's a bad matchup for LSU because LSU likes to play big, right? They like to control the paint. They like to score around the rim, and they like to have 2 post players on the floor at the same time. LSU didn't do that for most of the game. They went small for most of the game instead. And what that looks like, it's your point guard, Cheyenne Day-Wilson, or last year Poa, and then it's Kaylin Gilbert, then it's Flage, then it's Michaela, and then it's Anissa in the middle, because Anissa isn't any taller than 6'1", and she's your tallest player on the floor. And because she's such a good rebounder, you can have her as LSU's tallest player and not lose any of your rebounding advantage, right? Because she's so good. And that's huge for LSU, because having that ability to play small ball and not lose any of your defense or rebounding, it gives you a greater chance against some of these teams that like to stretch you out, shoot a lot of threes, play smaller lineups, and then space you out and really run down the floor. We could see South Carolina do that, and we could see LSU counter with that small ball lineup on Thursday. And if they do, I think that's sort of like something else that Kim Mulkey has in her back pocket that she really didn't have much of last year. Because Angel Reese was there, she had to be on the floor at all times. Anissa Moore was there, she had to be on the floor at all times. I'm expecting Anissa probably to play 40 minutes, probably the full way, as long as she stays out of foul trouble. And you could see her in that smaller lineup, and that's one thing that LSU can use to maybe pull off an upset.
Yeah. So let's turn the page and talk about the chances of LSU pulling off that upset, because they are 20-0, and you can't knock anything they've done. They've had a brilliant season. But to a certain extent, this is always going to be sort of the last box Kim Mulkey needs to check at LSU. Now, she's won a national title. She's checked the box you want. But she's 0-4 against South Carolina. Now, 3 of those have been by single digits, but the one game that was in Columbia was the one game that wasn't. I think it was a 24-point South Carolina win. LSU as a program has not beaten South Carolina since 2012, 13 straight losses. Obviously, you're talking about the premier program in the country. So it's not really unexpected. I mean, anytime you beat them, it would be unexpected. But boy, I can, without even having talked to Kim Mulkey or her players, and I know you have, Reed, this is one they'd really like to check off.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if we get a chance to talk to Kim Mulkey this week, or we're not sure if we will because of the weather or not, I just think that she'd probably play it down and say, we don't want to make it more than just what it is, one game in January. But there has to be a small part of her and a small part of LSU that really wants to win this one, right? Just because, you've lost 4 straight since Kim Mulkey's been here. And it's been tough. South Carolina is the bar. When LSU won the championship in 2023, they lost. That was the game they lost by 20-something points to South Carolina. They didn't have to play South Carolina again in the tournament because Iowa beat South Carolina in the Final Four, if you remember. So South Carolina, if LSU wants to win the SEC, either the regular season title or the tournament title, South Carolina's going to be standing in their way. And until LSU can beat South Carolina, South Carolina will always be in their way. South Carolina's just really they're just on another level. They lost earlier this season to UCLA. That was a surprising loss. It was only their second regular season loss in the last 4 years, which is pretty remarkable. And just in case, if you think that that loss might mean they're a little bit more vulnerable than they usually are, they've only gone out and just blown out a bunch of power conference teams since then. After they lost to UCLA, they blew out Iowa State. They won by 40. Then they blew out Purdue, Duke, TCU, everybody. And obviously they're off to a great start in SEC play. We can break that down a little bit if you want to, Zach. Just the numbers, the scoring margins they've had in those games, it was pretty remarkable, particularly the last 2 or 3.
Yeah, they have won every SEC game by at least, I believe, 17 points. That was against number 5 Texas, and then they beat another top 20 team in Oklahoma, 101-60 on Sunday.
101-60. They beat them by 41. That's a really good Oklahoma team, Zach. It's a really good.
Yeah, this is not like we're talking about you're playing one of the bottom dwellers of the conference. This is another SEC title contender, and they've got Oklahoma and LSU coming up. That's a huge week. Could they overlook one of those teams? It certainly wasn't the Sooners. They beat them by 41.
Yeah, and the games against Texas and Oklahoma, South Carolina won them by an average margin of 29 points. Those are 2 top 10, top 15 fringe type teams. They'd be top 10 if South Carolina hadn't beaten them recently. Those are 2 really good teams that are competing for SEC titles, and South Carolina just blew them out. So it just goes to show you that they're just on another level, and it's going to take a lot from LSU to pull off a win, pull off an upset. I think, LSU can do it. They've got enough talent, and they're well coached enough to do it. But even if they don't, it's nothing to hang your hat over because South Carolina is just on another level.
No, and I think that's important to if you're going to beat South Carolina, you'd like it to be in the postseason, ideally in the NCAA tournament. But this is probably, I don't know if I want to say probably, but certainly might not be the last time you play South Carolina this year. Now, having said that, it's a huge feather in your cap. And if LSU could win this game, the talk of an undefeated regular season becomes, I think, probably pretty deafening. You're still going to have to play Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, you're still going to play good teams. It's not, I don't know if I would say it's likely you go undefeated if you win this game, but there would certainly be talk of that, Reed.
Yeah, and there would also be talk of maybe them being the number 1 team in the country. Right now that's UCLA, but if LSU can beat South Carolina, then they certainly have a compelling case. It's probably by that point it's probably too soon to talk about an undefeated regular season because you still got to play Texas, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Tennessee again. But yeah, if LSU wins this game, then we need to start really, really, really taking them seriously as a team that can compete for a national championship and win a national championship and do it again in the last twice in the last 4 years. So that's what you're looking at if LSU wins. If they lose, then it's probably, I don't know if that will change much of what I think of them. I mean, it would have to take a blowout loss for me to change my opinion of LSU and where it can go. I just think that how they match up against this team is going to tell us just a little bit about where things stand and where they can go. I'm not sure that it's going to change my mind because I just think that South Carolina is that good.
Today's show is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. So you mentioned how LSU matches up. Let's talk about that a little bit. South Carolina, very interesting team. They don't have anybody averaging more. Joyce Edwards is their leading scorer at 12.1 points per game, but they've got 5 players all averaging better than 9 points per game. They've got 7 players averaging better than 7 and 10 players averaging better than 5. So they just kind of come at you in waves. They'll turn you over. They're all good at everything. It's just, I think the problem is it's kind of hard to find a weakness in the Gamecocks.
Right. They don't have that standalone, clear top tier best player, right? If they had a player who is clearly their best player, their best scorer, then it might be a little bit easier to game plan for them because you can say, okay, how are we defending her? How are we going to guard her? How are we going to work to take her away? South Carolina doesn't have that. They go 8 or 9 deep. They and all 8 or 9 of their rotation players can pretty much do everything. They can all handle the ball. They can all create their own shot. They can all defend. They can all shoot from the outside. So they're really just, I like to compare them to like a machine. You know, they're not just like one player or two players carrying them, responsible for all their offense. They're a collective of players who are all talented in their own right, and they're more of a unit. You know, they gel together. And Dawn Staley has talked about how there's not a single player on her team that can start in the WNBA. She said that. So they need to work on becoming positive role players, you know, people who play winning basketball. And what better way to do that than a South Carolina team that wins every game they play and you know, dominates all of their conference opponents. So they're just a collection of players who all play smart basketball, who all do the right thing, who all play both ends of the floor. And then they also happen to be one of the best coached groups in the country. So if I'm game planning against them, maybe there's a couple things I can do and try to take away, but I don't see many weaknesses. I don't see any kind of soft points that you can go after and really try to take advantage of, because they're just well fortified and they're really strong together, cohesive group that just collectively blows out its opponents usually.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. Keys to the Game is brought to you by Associated Grocers. Associated Grocers is hiring. Join a team committed to the success of independent retail grocers. Apply today at Associated Grocers and be part of something great. And I look at these defensive statistics, and you know, okay, the scoring, you got one player averaging 12 points per game and a bunch averaging like between 9 and 11. Okay, fine. Not impressive. But these defensive statistics, they hold opponents to, let's see, it is, now I lost it now that I had it, 34.2% shooting. 34.2% shooting for the season is what they're allowing. And even with all those missed shots, which you think, okay, the other team's going to get some rebounds, they're out-rebounding teams by 10.6 rebounds per game. They force 17.5 turnovers per game, 9.5 steals per game. So over half of those are live ball turnovers that are steals, 6 blocks per game. I mean, like, it just seems like a miserable experience to try to score a basket against this team, much less go beat them over 40 minutes.
And it's not like their schedule's been soft. They played a ton of power conference teams in the non-conference, and they've already played Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. In the non-conference, they had Iowa State, Purdue, Duke, TCU, UCLA. That's kind of a murderer's row of opponents. That's as tough as it gets, and South Carolina handled them all pretty well. And for the numbers to look like that after the schedule they've played, it makes it all the more impressive.
Yeah. So LSU, I mean, you say, what do they have to do to win this game? They're going to have to score. They're going to have to try to keep up with South Carolina. But on the other end, you've also, you know, maybe you turn this into a rock fight where you know you're not going to go score 80 against this team probably. So you limit their chances at open shots. You limit their second chance opportunities. You turn them over a little bit, get yourself a couple easy buckets, and maybe you try to win a game in the 60s.
Yeah, that's one thing you can do. I think that's kind of what it was last year in the regular season and the tournament. It was a very tough, physical, defensively oriented game. I think if there's one thing you can do, like one player I like to look at is Malaysia Fulwiley. She's a sophomore. She's really athletic. She comes off the bench and she gives South Carolina a spark offensively. I think, you know, remembering the SEC tournament game last year, she played really well. She had north of 15 points off the bench. I think if she comes off the bench and if she gets you 15, 20 points, even if she's in double figures, I don't think South Carolina can lose that game. I think if she gives them that kind of production, then they're probably unbeatable. But if you can hold her down, if you can prevent her from scoring, then maybe South Carolina's offense doesn't produce as much points as it usually does, and you might have a chance. I think if LSU can, maybe once she gets on the floor, maybe target her a little bit. Maybe Flau'jae Johnson and Kayla Williams can take her off the dribble, try to get her into foul trouble, try to expose her on the defensive end of the floor. Then Dawn Staley might cut back on her minutes a little bit, and then they don't have that spark off the bench. That's one area I could see, like if they can take Fulwiley out of the game, then I think LSU might have a greater chance of winning, because she's that X factor for them, right? As you know, her scoring, if she gives them that extra boost of scoring, then they're almost impossible to beat, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's you need to play your A game, and you kind of need at least to force them into like a B or a C game to even have a chance. Because if they play their A game, it's going to be tough. So we're going to take a bigger picture look at where LSU fits in the women's college basketball national landscape, and maybe we'll offer a prediction after this on LSU South Carolina.
Experience the convenience and cleanliness that Waste Pro brings to Mardi Gras, LSU tailgates, and festivals with our top-notch portable toilet services. Perfect for large crowds and community events. Join the countless satisfied families and organizers who trust Waste Pro to keep their gatherings spotless and sanitary. Discover more about our services and make your next event a success at wasteprousa.com.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional healthcare for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You give me love.
Since 1988, Classic Industrial Services, Inc. has led the industry in specialty contracting. From thermal insulation to scaffolding, coatings, and beyond, we cover it all. Every minute matters in our commitment to quality and safety. We're here to serve with roofing, siding, heat trace, and refractory services. Visit classicindustrial.com for more information.
Okay, welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider, breaking down LSU South Carolina with Advocate beat writer Reed Darcey. Appreciate you all hanging out with us. Hope everybody is doing well, preparing for the snow. And if you're listening to this on Tuesday, hopefully you haven't been snowed in. I don't know what we should have, like over-unders. We're about to talk our sports betting segment, over-unders and how many inches Baton Rouge gets and New Orleans gets, and all of that stuff. But in the meantime, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's LSU Tigers at NOLA.com. Hit the like button while you're down there. Sign up for notifications. You can also find every video on Facebook or an audio-only version on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. All right, Reed, this is our sports betting segment. It is brought to you by the Queen Casino's DraftKings Sportsbook Bar and 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails. With top-notch screens and live betting, it's the ultimate spot to watch your favorite teams and enjoy a cold brew or a signature cocktail. The Queen Casino is the only land-based casino in Baton Rouge, and it's your go-to for game day or any day. So, LSU, if you look in the betting market, there's no odds out for this game against South Carolina yet, although we were talking off-air, probably going to expect a line around 10 points. Is that fair?
I would say hover around double digits. That's what I would expect it to be. You know better than I do, Zach, but that feels about right.
Yeah, I mean 10, 10 and a half, 11 and a half, something in that range. I think if you make it less than that, and you're looking at a South Carolina team that again has won every SEC game by at least 17 points, and it's not like they've played a weak schedule in the SEC. They played two of the best teams in Texas and Oklahoma and won those games easily too. I just don't know that you can make it less than that and expect not to get crushed. In fact, it might even be more than that, because you got to think about, is a bettor going to lay those points? It's a tough task. But I was looking more big picture. LSU's 20-0. We've talked about this, how good they are. Are they South Carolina? No, probably not. Could they beat South Carolina on the right day? Yes. But they are only the seventh choice to win the national title right now. They're 17-1 at DraftKings. I think I saw they were like 20-1 at some other sports books. Like, they're not really being taken seriously as a national title threat by the betting market. Is that disrespect to you? I mean, should they? Obviously, the betting market is what it is. It's based on money and not respect. But do you feel like the chances are more realistic than that?
I don't think it's disrespectful. I think it's about right. I think when you look at it, there are two undefeated teams left in the country, LSU and UCLA. UCLA has the win over South Carolina. So they've got that signature win. They've got the thing that they can hang their hats on and be like, hey, look what we did to the best team in college basketball, the team that's blowing everybody out, the defending, the reigning undefeated national champions. LSU doesn't have a win like that. They've got some quality wins. They beat Tennessee. They beat Vanderbilt. But it doesn't have a win over a team that's, a bona fide top 5, top 10 team. And until they get that, until they can show that maybe they can be competitive in a game like that against South Carolina, a team like South Carolina, I think that they'll probably be on the outside looking in at that top 3, 4, 5 teams that are really being talked about for the national championship. I think they'll always, until they get that point, they'll always be kind of a tier below. That doesn't mean they can't win it. That doesn't mean they can't, if things break right, if they're playing their best basketball in March, slide into the Final Four after winning the Elite Eight, kind of like what they did in 2023. But it just means that they're a little bit unproven right now. And until we see how they fare against unquestionably one of the top 2 teams in the country, they'll probably be in that second tier just for the time being. And then we'll evaluate them after that.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar to where they were 2 years ago, right? And they won the national title. As of right now, by the way, South Carolina is your national title favorite, followed in pretty short order by UConn, Notre Dame, USC, then UCLA, then a small gap to Texas, and then a pretty big gap to LSU is 7th. And then after that, it drops way down. Oklahoma's the next team at 40-1. So LSU is kind of considered one of the 7 teams with a better than, say, 5% chance at doing this. So I don't think it's disrespect. I just think, like you said, they're still a bit, as far as 20-0 goes, still a bit unproven. But obviously a big chance Thursday to prove themselves. Let's put you on the spot, Reed. Do you think LSU gets it done?
I'm gonna say no. I don't think so. I don't know if I have an actual score for you, but if the spread's going to be around 10 to 12 points, I'd probably say that LSU covers that barely, but I don't think that they will win. It's going to be really tough to go on the road and beat South Carolina. I just don't see it. Maybe I'd feel differently if LSU was at home. That's a tough place to play. South Carolina is really playing their best basketball of the season. It feels like right now. And they've got all the momentum. LSU's got momentum too, and LSU's good. But keep in mind, so I just can't get over the fact that South Carolina just beat Oklahoma by 41 points. That happened yesterday. I saw the score and I'm like, wait a second, am I doing this math? Like, is this like my poor math skills? Is that really 41 points? And yeah, it's really 41 points. It's tough to believe. I just think that their LSU, it has enough talent to win the national championship. It doesn't really have too many weaknesses. But South Carolina, like I mentioned, they're just on another level. And until LSU can really beat them and get that first win over them, I'll probably default to South Carolina, especially at home.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, they're going to have 18,000 fans in that arena. They always do. They play very well there. They play very well anywhere, but we've seen it again. Kim Mulkey 0-4 at LSU against South Carolina. 3 of them were very close competitive games. The 4th was the one at South Carolina 2 years ago, where a national championship LSU team lost by 24. So, I wouldn't take too much away from it if LSU loses. In fact, I personally think, and you can tell me if you disagree, Reed, but if LSU goes out there, plays hard, makes South Carolina play for 40 minutes and loses by 8 points, that actually makes me feel better about LSU. That means if you get them on a neutral site later, you feel like you're right there.
Yeah, the only thing would be if it's a lopsided game. If they lose by 30 or 40 points, that's one thing where you look at it and you'd be like, okay, maybe they're kind of far away from title contending right now at this point. But these games, they're usually, like you mentioned, they're usually tough, physical, close. And I think if they hang close with South Carolina, then that probably, as an LSU fan, that should probably give you a little bit more confidence in where they're at and where they can wind up come March.
Yep. Okay, we're going to wrap things up on this episode of the LSU Sports Insider with a quick look at tonight's CFP national title game. Around the CFP is brought to you by Classic Industrial Services. They're proudly serving Louisiana and the entire United States. From large capital projects to commercial projects or your smaller quick response needs, Classic Industrial is your go-to for quality and safety. They're not just about business, they're a proud community partner, supporting local initiatives and helping build a stronger Baton Rouge. Because in Classic Industrial Services, every minute matters. Okay, Reed, you were not on Thursday's show. If you want a full preview, we kind of talked about the whole Notre Dame, Brian Kelly, LSU angle. A bunch of Notre Dame fans came on the YouTube channel and talked about how, oh, we don't care about LSU. Why does LSU keep talking about us? They were commenting on our YouTube channel. But anyway, you can go check that out if you want the full preview on that. And Scott, Ravelet, Wilson, and Koki all made their picks. We didn't get Reed Darcey's pick, though. So 6:30 p.m. tonight. I have the wrong headline up there, by the way. It still says LSU South Carolina. But what are you thinking tonight?
I'm thinking Ohio State, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than what most people are expecting it to be. Just because I have a ton of faith in Notre Dame's defense. I've been super impressed with them the last few weeks. I think they're going to have a really good game plan. They're going to try to take away Jeremiah Smith. I'm not sure if that they're going to be able to. But I do think Ohio State has the edge just because they've got so many playmakers on offense. They've got those two good wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. They've got the two running backs who are really electric in the open field and really create their own yards. So I think Ohio State has the edge just because they've got more playmakers on offense. But it wouldn't surprise me if it's a close game just because Notre Dame's defense is that good and I believe in them so much. So I'm expecting a good game, but I think Ohio State, you probably see one or two plays from be it Egbuka or Jeremiah Smith or maybe Quinshon Judkins that really put the Buckeyes over the top. What's the spread, Zach? Do you have it off the top of your head? Do you have any idea what it is?
I believe it's 8.5. It was as of yesterday.
All right, so I'll say that Notre Dame covers that. I think Notre Dame covers that. Makes it a good competitive game. I really like both these teams. It's been a fun college football season, and I really love the expanded playoff. I think that you can tweak it a little bit, but I think I'm with Koki here and Wilson. 12 teams is really 12 teams works. The format.
Feels right.
Yeah, I think I really like how the season shook out, especially towards the tail end when teams are trying to get into the playoff, and we got some really good playoff games too. I think 12 teams is the right balance there. Maybe we can tweak it a little bit, but I really enjoyed the first expanded playoff. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think people were complaining about none of the teams with byes won, and the seeding didn't work, and I think you just need more than 1 year of sample size to make that judgment. This was a strange year in college football, kind of all the way around, where you had a team like Ohio State that was preseason. Were they preseason number 1 or 2? And they kind of stumbled. I mean, they lost that game at Oregon, which any team in the country could have lost. They stumble against Michigan, and instead of being like the 2 seed, they're the 8 seed. That changed things. Notre Dame had the fluky loss against Northern Illinois. That changes their seed. These are still really good teams. And I don't think you can look at Georgia lost its quarterback. That affects things. You can't look at this one kind of strange year and say, oh, the seeding is all screwy. They need to fix this immediately. Let's give it a couple of years and see what happens. And then if the teams with byes are 2-10 in 3 years, then we could say, okay, well, maybe there is a rest versus rust argument to be had here, and we need to tweak this. But as of right now, I say let's let it play out a couple more years and see what we've got.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think everyone wants to rush into it. Everyone wants to say, oh, the 12 is too many, or these games there are too many blowouts here. I think what matters most is that if under a 4-team format, Notre Dame and Ohio State, the two clearly best teams in the country, wouldn't have even been in, most likely, right? So that's a big win for the expanded playoff. It's a big win for college football. I think that these teams they should have a little bit more margin for error. I don't think that 1 loss or 2 losses should really just be able to tank their season. I don't think that's great for the sport. I don't think it's great for college football. I think it's important to have teams have the ability to improve and get better as the year goes on and play their best football when it matters. So I really like how things shook out, and for the argument there that that diminishes the regular season or makes rivalry games less important. Like when you think about Ohio State, Michigan this year, it didn't feel any less important than it always has been. Like the police had to pepper spray the players at the end of the game. Like it didn't feel like that game was diminished whatsoever, even though Ohio State still win a national championship, even though they lost it.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made, okay, should it be 8, 12, 14, or 16? I mean, I think that we're in the right range right now. So we'll see what happens in future years, and we'll see what happens tonight between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And then we get the snow, and Reed tries to make us fly out on, what are you flying out Wednesday?
I'm flying up Thursday morning.
Okay. Well, that might actually be better.
Yeah, it might have worked out.
Yeah, you might get a thaw. So hopefully you make it to Columbia by tip-off 7 p.m. Thursday night, LSU against South Carolina. We will, of course, be following it, and we will have we're going to try to do a post-game show Thursday night, Reed. We'll see how late it gets and what kind of post-game duties you've got, but we'll see if you can join us from Colonial Life Arena there in Columbia, South Carolina. So until then, for Reed Darcey, I'm Zach Ewing. Thank you for watching the LSU Sports Insider podcast, and we'll see you next time.